I moved to the UAE when I was just 6 or maybe 7 years old. And of course, I wouldn't be thinking and planning it at that age. But after living in the UAE for 19 years in total, I want to tell you what I would wish to know before going there, either considering moving there or when moving there. So in this video, I'm going to lay it all out for you. It's going to give you the insider view of the UAE from somebody who's lived in 4 different Muslim countries, although I was born in the UK. Let's get started. So the first thing to know about the UAE is it's a society unlike any other, I would say. And one of the key features of this society is it's a transitional society, meaning transitory. That's probably the better word. Transitory, meaning people are coming in and out all the time. I did my whole schooling in the UAE, and my friends were just coming and going constantly. It's not like I had friends for 10 years. I know, like, if you're in the UK, US, whatever, you live there, you have friends that you literally went to primary school with, secondary school with, and so you still stayed close. And then you got jobs in London and you still have your friends around you and you're in touch with them, etc. In the UAE, it's not like that. Like, someone will come, you'll be friends with them, and they'll leave 2-3 years later. Another one will come and you'll make friends with them, they'll leave 2 or 3 years later. This is the nature of the society, because most people coming to the UAE, they are coming purely to make money. And because there's not a citizenship setup like maybe in Western countries or whatever, people very much have that mindset of, I'm coming, getting my money, saving my money, no taxes, well-paid salaries, this and that, and I'm going to leave. And that is how the society is set up. Now, one of the consequences of that is people don't always want to invest in the country, meaning they don't want to invest energy, time, effort in building things in the country, like a friendship network, like communities or organizations or whatever. You know, stuff that you might find in many countries, like this is a rock climbing club, or this is a, I don't know, Toastmasters club. There are those things, but there's just less of them because people are more in the mindset of, look, I'm here to make my money and I'm out, right? So that does impact the society and the way it is over there. I know a friend of mine, he was very active, like going to durus and trying to meet with people and stuff. But he said, I just found people were just interested in work, maybe a few durus, and leave. They didn't want to build relationships with you so much. So I believe it might have changed a little bit now, especially in Dubai, because there are more people now getting those 5-10 year residency permits. Maybe people, you know, even if they come on a job, they might get another job. There are more people that are staying there longer. But generally, I would say this is still how the society is set up. People are coming in and people are leaving. And that just gives the society that kind of flavor, that culture that comes with it. The other thing is that it's a multicultural country for sure, right? Like, there are people from all over the world. And that's like what I'm used to, right? Like, because I grew up in the UAE, I'm very much used to, like, I went to a British school, but we had people from the UK, of course, but also from Australia, from South Africa, from literally, obviously, plenty of Arabs from Palestine, Egypt, Jordan, whatever. We had Emiratis as well. We had people from Nepal, people from India, Pakistan, like everywhere, right? Then I even went to university, but it was in French language university. So we got a whole different flavor of people there. People from North Africa, people from West Africa. Some of my closest friends in university were from Senegal, but I never met people from Senegal before going to that university. People from Mauritius, people from, you know, all of these French-speaking countries, people from France, of course. So it's a multicultural society. However, what I will say is, people still stick to their bubble, right? So, like, yes, when you're going to the shop, when you're walking down the street, you will find Indians, Sri Lankans, Filipinos, Egyptians. But are you going to be friends with those people? Probably not. Are you going to have relationships with those people? Probably not, right? People tend to stick to their own people. Even I worked for a short time in an office job in Dubai, and we had in the marketing team, we had a few South Asians, Filipino, and then we had like Arabs, but they were like very much westernized Arabs. And guess who like would socialize with who outside of work? It was always like those Westerner kind of people would be on their own. They would talk about, after the weekend, they would be like, yeah, we went to the pub or this and that, and we did this and that with their own like Western friends. The South Asians would just be with South Asians, the Filipinos, Filipinos. So there wasn't much mixing. So in terms of like deeper relationships, friendships, etc., yes, it is nice to be surrounded by people from all over the world, and they're not to be those any kind of like racism feeling per se, right? There is maybe a level of racism, but you just feel like, yeah, we're all foreigners here. Basically, that's how you feel, right? But when it comes to deep relationships, it doesn't tend to happen. That you have deep friendships with someone else, right? Even you see that Westerners that move to the UAE, who are they friends with? They're friends with other Westerners, maybe Muslim Westerners, but they're friends with Westerners. Even I found that the British Muslim who's originally from Pakistan, he wouldn't tend to make friends with a freshie, if you like, Pakistani in the UAE. Even though they both have Pakistani origins, they're both Muslim, they both speak English, but, people just tend to stick in their bubble. Even like Syrians will be in their own bubble and Lebanese in their own bubble, right? There might be some crossover, but you see what I mean? So that's one of the bit of the contradictions or whatever of the UAE, is that it's a multicultural society on the surface, but in the deeper relationships, I found that there isn't too much mixing. The third thing is that in the UAE, especially like I said, in the last few years, you can be stable there. Like you can get the residency permit and just stay longer and longer and longer, as long as you pay for it. And it's one of the reasons I left. I left to Turkey hoping that I would be able to get some sort of 5-year residency in Turkey or even citizenship. Turned out that wasn't really true. I didn't want to live in the UAE where me living there was reliant on me paying money. And sometimes it would be like quite a significant amount of money. And I just thought, what if I'm there for like 10 years and my kids grow up there and they're used to there, and then I have one bad financial year or something and we have to leave? I just didn't like that idea. So yeah, you can be stable there. It just comes at a cost. It comes at the cost of either having a business, registering a business there so you can kind of sponsor yourself to get the residency there, or I guess buying property, right? I believe you have to buy property for about £100,000, and then you can get some sort of a 5-year visa, a golden visa, something like that. So yeah, I guess it's more stable than a lot of Muslim countries. It's just the stability comes at a cost. That's all. That's what I would say. Okay, now the next one is a bit hard to explain. I wish I knew, and I didn't know this, of course, when I moved there, but from about 2011-12, I felt more and more out of place in the country. I felt more and more like my values are not in line with the values of this place. And I don't mean like the average person, but just the direction that you see it going and stuff. And I just felt out of place. So if you're somebody who's, I don't know how to explain it. In the end, you're Muslim and you grow up with that idea of reviving the Ummah and thinking of the Ummah's issues. Personally, I would feel like you would be out of place. You'd feel out of place unless the country kind of sucks it out of you. Because I also felt that as well, that going to the malls and the cafes and the restaurants and seeing how tidy and clean everything is, it did kind of, I think, take me away from the reality of how a lot of people are living and kind of put me in a bubble, and maybe you could say disconnected me a bit from the average Muslim in the world. So you might feel a bit of a clash there. Okay, next is the indoor culture. So in the UAE, the weather is comfortable outside for about 3 months of the year. Maybe you could push it to 4 months of the year. That means most of the year, it's not going to be very comfortable to, I don't know, play football outside, play basketball outside, go hiking, go trekking, walk places, go to the park. I remember going to the park, probably it was in the summer sometime, but in the evening, okay, 8, 9 p.m. And you're just sitting there sweating. And you're sitting there sweating. So it's not always comfortable. And because of that, people have created an indoor culture, right? Where a lot of stuff is done indoors in the UAE. And I don't know, I just didn't like that. I like to be more in touch with nature. And I double believed that when I moved to Turkey. And Turkey is very nice for about 10 months of the year. Maybe 9 months of the year, right? You've got 2-3 months of the year where it's too cold, at least in Istanbul, where it's too cold to like go out and hang outside. But for the other rest of the year, it's beautiful. It's actually perfect weather, amazing weather. And what that means is you're much more likely to do stuff like paintball, airsoft, horse riding, trekking, picnics, barbecue. And I just like that. And especially when it comes to your kids, you want to think about this. Do you want your kids to be raised where they're very like indoors and everything is very spotless and clean indoors and everything's very hygienic and everything's very soft, right? Personally, I don't want that. I'm the kind of guy that when I went in Turkey, I slaughtered my first Eid Udhiyah sheep by my own hands. I brought my son with me. I want my son to see the real life, right? I want my sons to grow up being able to do camping and swimming in the beach, and not like a perfect beach. It's fine to go now and then, go to a perfect beach sometime. But I just want them to be, to access nature, right? Basically. And UAE has a very indoor culture. And so you might not access that as much. Even the outdoor activities, like I know I think it was Hatta, even Ras Al Khaimah, some places outside of Dubai, they have like outdoor things that they've developed, but it's always like that glamping type of thing. And I just prefer more rugged stuff. I know like in the 90s, early 2000s, when I was growing up in the UAE, we had like scouts. We used to go camping in the desert sometimes. And I guess you can do that. Like you can make an effort, but it's just gonna require more effort because of the weather and because the general society is just like, no, we don't really want to go camping. I heard there's a new, chicken wing spot that opened up. Let's check that out. And it always ends up, somehow, you always end up in a restaurant, no matter what. So yeah, that's something to consider, especially for your kids, I would say. Me personally, I prefer my kids grow up in an outdoor kind of culture where they're walking places, where things are not spick and span always kind of thing, because that's how most of the world is. And even a place like UAE, as pristine as it is, how long will that be able to last? Who knows? And finally, again, this is one that's a bit hard for me to articulate, but I wish I knew, and I guess I wish my dad knew this as well, and he would wish that he knew this, is that the UAE somehow, I don't know how to explain it, it messes you up as a child, like a child growing up there, because the society is so different. I've seen a lot of people that grew up with me in the UAE. I hear about them later, and they just seem to struggle to just get on in life, right? Like go and do normal things. I found people who are, for example, in my class in school, very articulate, good at school. They kind of end up in very average jobs. Like they eventually went back to the UK, because that's something as well, going back to my first point about it being a transitionary place, especially when it comes to university. Lots of people leave the UAE to go university elsewhere for obvious reasons. So my friends, a lot of them, they went back to the UK for university, and they seemed to not be able to adapt. Even though they spoke fully like British English, and they're not even Muslim, a lot of them, they just didn't seem to be able to sort things out. And other people who are not necessarily British, they just struggle to sort their lives out. I don't know what that's about. I think it's something to do with how the UAE is a very unique country compared to the rest of the world. And so what you're used to in the UAE is just different elsewhere. Just one thing, like maybe to explain to you, is like the indoor culture thing, I think is different to many countries in the world. Also, a lot of people don't work when they're young in the UAE, like you're not even allowed. The first job I got in the UAE was literally just stewarding for the Formula One in Abu Dhabi. But that was like when I was 19. Like when you're 16, 17, you're not allowed to work. And then even when you're older, it's like they're not going to take you, especially if you have like Western passport. They don't want you, They want people from other nationalities. So it's just, maybe you could say it's a country where everything's taken care of, everything's clean, spick and span. And, to live in a more normal way, a bit of a rougher way, a bit of a more resilient way, to grow up like that, it requires a lot of effort. So that's why, although it's very safe there, right? And you wouldn't worry about your kids there at all, it's ironic that by living there, you might be making your kids so unresilient, if that's a word, that they just can't really operate in other countries, right? And the UAE is a very small country. I'll put it like this. If your kids grow up in the UAE, I think there's a big chance they're going to leave it one day. And then I would just, like they say, I'd rather be a soldier in peace than a gardener in war or whatever. So I would rather like my kids are a bit tougher and adaptable. Now, who knows if they're going to get that by growing up partly in Turkey and partly in Algeria. But, I think so. So these are the things that I wish I knew, or I can help you to know before going to the UAE. And you might disagree with some of them. You might agree. Let me know in the comments, no problem. But I think it's good for me to bring up these topics. And then you can go and visit and see for yourself whether you judge it to be that way or not. And with that, this is a channel all about Hijrah. It's for people who are existing, like living in Muslim countries, or who are thinking of making the move. This is for you. All the topics, different countries, different concepts you have to get in your head when you're living this life. So subscribe if you're interested in that, and I'll see you in the next one, inshallah.